Thank you for downloading and happiness!
Dare to be happy. We are two curious friends that want to explore what makes us happy.
In each episode, we will take a topic in alphabetical order and discuss how it relates to and impacts happiness.
We'll live the experience of each concept through a dare that we set each other and then talk about how it affected our happiness.
As well as diving into psychological theories and evidence which supports or contradicts our personal experiences.
In other words, in this show, psychology meets play.
I'm Kitty Newman, Director of Trapeze Media, a digital marketing agency that leads with social. My company philosophy is based on the importance of play in all our lives and how important it is to be happy at work. I have been obsessed with the circus for a few years, hence the name Trapeze Media, and making time for things like handstands and aerial in amongst the day-to-day challenges that come with running a successful business makes me happy.
My name is Klaudia Mitura. I'm a work psychologist and learning and development specialist with a purpose to boost happiness in the workplace. I love experimenting and applying scientific research on happiness to my daily ups and downs, or just to prove my other half wrong. I also like to look for happiness in unusual places, so I won't shy away from diving with sharks or starring in a pantomime. Sometimes this gets me in trouble. Episode 2 on setting boundaries. How was your dare going?
Setting boundaries this week as part of the dare was really beneficial to my working week. How was it for you?
I'm so happy that you are pleased, rather you think that I'm just mean to you. Setting you all those horrible tasks to do. I came to the conclusion that the boundaries are a very useful tool that allow us to achieve a balance between our strong need to belong and our need to stand alone, expressing our individuality and protecting our happiness.
I feel like this is one of those topics or things that I've been told throughout my whole life will be beneficial, and I've tried to do it and it's hard, and now I'm older, I feel I have more strength to do it, and by God it feels good.
Definitely, I feel like once you achieve successful boundaries and healthy boundaries within your relationships, definitely you feel quite proud. You're like, yes, I can manage this in a constructive way. But before we go into sharing our experiences, how did it go, let's look into a concept of boundaries a little bit. Obviously, one very important aspect of our happiness is our desire to be part of something meaningful and feel connected with other people. There are numerous studies that confirm that our social connection with others increases our happiness. So if you look at the studies that research the happiest people, the differentiating factor between happiest people from people who are less happy is that high level of social integration. So no wonder setting boundaries is so difficult. If the idea that we connect with other people, we belong, and we have beautiful relationships in our life makes us so happy.
Is what you're saying then, thinking that if we put boundaries in, we are going to lose out on those relationships?
I think maybe that's why I personally felt a little bit reluctant of maybe setting boundaries.
I find that I worry about boundaries in work relationships. I worry that putting these clear boundaries are actually going to push my clients away, and they will think I'm being difficult, and they will work with someone who will do what they want.
I think such a valid concern. And it is quite interesting because on the other hand, the studies show that if we don't have healthy boundaries within our relationship, we will pay a high price. For instance, there are studies that show that individuals who are not setting healthy boundaries had more regrets about their life choices, because they maybe done something they didn't want to, or they really wanted to achieve certain goals in life, but they conformed to their peers instead. So it is a tricky subject. As you say, on one hand, we want to belong. We don't want to feel like we're setting boundaries to push people away. On the other hand, the research suggests that if we don't have healthy boundaries, we may have regrets around our actions, behaviors, and relationships. Have you ever been in a situation when you maybe followed the crowd despite unhappiness?
Yeah, definitely. When I've been out, I love to just stay out with everybody. If one more drink, and I'm like, okay, yeah, I'll stay, even though I've got like things I want to do the next day that are really important to me, and I want to get home and get to bed and just look after myself a little bit. But that one more drink pressure, and I will stay easily.
For me, it's also in terms of the work situation. So as you said, in social situation, definitely that idea of following the crowd, but also in work situations, I'm quite a yes person. So I find myself to saying yes to various projects because I want to really help and I really want to get involved and I'm very curious. But sometimes I feel like I've just said yes to so various clients, projects, expectation and demands that suddenly I don't have enough time and energy to deal with them all.
Yeah, I feel that urge to say yes all the time. When clients that are people that I'm working for are asking for things from me, which maybe go outside of what's been agreed initially to deliver, to like overachieve and to like make someone happy, I will say yes far too frequently or quickly. Maybe that's it. It's saying yes so quickly that makes me give too much for that agreement or something.
Do you think that boundaries could be remedy for those type of situations when we are in dilemma between I really want to belong, I really want to fulfill expectation and wishes of other people, but on the other hand I need to protect my happiness, my time, my energy?
So from having implemented the dare this week, I can see the benefits in it hugely. Before this though, before actually really thinking clearly about what boundaries are and where I need to set boundaries, I was definitely nervous and would have thought the opposite of it being something that would enhance these relationships and enhance my feeling of belonging and make me more confident in what I'm doing, because it felt like distancing myself from things. But once I'd actually implemented some clear boundaries, it was actually a much more open communication between me and the people that I was putting the boundaries in place around or for. It seemed like the communication became a lot clearer. They could understand where I was coming from and they could see my side more clearly, I think. And so that relationship became stronger and I became a lot more confident within that. And actually a lot has shifted for me when I've been thinking about boundaries in my work life.
I can so resonate with everything that you're saying. Because when I was doing the dare, I found myself in situation when in order to protect my time and my goals, I needed to set boundaries and I needed to say no. And at first it was really terrifying, but when I explained to people why I'm setting those boundaries, as you mentioned, that open communication appeared and that space to actually explain why something else is important to me and how I can propose alternative solutions. So it's not just radical no, how we can work together so that they are happy and my happiness is also protected.
Yeah, and setting boundaries doesn't mean you're being it doesn't mean you're being a dickhead. It means that you're just communicating what you need in order to do a good job for this. So when you get given all these opportunities that you're saying yes to, and actually I'm spread too thin now, I need to communicate my position and I need to communicate how I'm going to be able to do this job best.
Yes, I think communication, as in loads of different parts of our life, it's so crucial. And that idea of communicating clearly why we're setting certain boundaries was definitely something that I found very useful when setting healthy boundaries. Another one, which I actually struggled with, was this feeling of maybe missing out, because one of the actions I decided to implement was not to take part in all the online engagement group activities, as I feel I'm completely overflowing with WhatsApp messages, online Zoom dinners, other online activities that people are doing. That's all fantastic, and I feel very blessed that I'm being included. But on the other hand, I just don't have enough time and energy to be involved in all of them. And one of the boundaries for me in the there was trying to figure out how I can be involved, and also how I don't necessarily, as you already said, distance myself from the activity or suddenly have a massive fear of missing out.
Yeah. Those groups can be so overwhelming. I've left big WhatsApp groups in the past because I just find the pressure to contribute, and then I contribute, and then I'm like, oh God, that's gone to so many people. And I just found the whole thing just so overwhelming that I've left a few, and I stay out of a few, and have muted some. And when there's requests to get involved in Zooms, I'm actually sort of a bit distant, but I've communicated to say, look, I can't take part in all of this at the moment. And I think everybody understands where that's coming from. It doesn't seem to come back with much negative feedback. Nobody's like, hey, look, why aren't you getting involved? It's like, okay, yeah, fair enough. That's no problem. Do what you need to do.
Exactly, but still that communication of why are we setting a boundaries, of why are we taking particular decision. Another aspect that helped me this week with setting boundaries was reminding myself, why am I setting that boundary? Why is it important to me, to my happiness, to actually crave the time and energy for something else in my life? Why am I committed to that aspect? Why am I deciding not to take part or maybe say no? And what will I gain?
And how was that then? So what were your answers? What were your whys? And were they different? How many whys were there?
I just reminding myself that, okay, if I will say no to this group engagement or to that certain request, I will have a time to concentrate on something that is very important to me, whether that would be doing my yoga or writing something or preparing for this podcast. And I needed to remind myself, why am I doing that? And why am I committed to this?
This week, when you've been dared to set clear boundaries, do you think you've failed at any point to do that?
I think I started failing a little bit when I was trying to be quite radical. It was quite funny when I just was like, okay, that's it. I know WhatsApp engagement for me. And actually, that was going completely radical. It was really not helping. That was just causing more stress and anxiety. I think I was trying to take the boundaries a bit to more kind of exaggerated, severe extent. Actually, I realized that if I'm saying no now, it doesn't mean I have to say no forever. If I'm not engaging with the group on Thursday because I'm working on something important for me, that doesn't mean I cannot respond to them on Sunday evening. I know that it sounds quite obvious, but I was going quite radical because I said, okay, I have a dare, I need to set boundaries. And those are the aspects I'm struggling with.
You went hardcore.
Exactly, I went hardcore. And I think there is really no need to go hardcore. You don't have to be radical, and you can be flexible in your boundaries. Yeah, that was a big learning point for me. Was there anything that you failed at when setting boundaries?
I've had a really interesting week at work, and boundary setting has really been quite a key thing for me in the last few months, really. Ever since lockdown, I've had to be quite clear, and it echoes what you're saying about why I'm doing this. Why am I stepping away from an account, for example, that I've worked on for a few years, and I had to keep reminding myself, this is the reason why you're doing this. Set the clear boundaries about this is how this process is going to go, and this is why I'm doing it. And then this week, I've seen the real sort of strength that I've been able to manifest from having a clearer mind or clearer sight about what it is that I'm doing. And I think a lot of that has been born from boundaries. So it's been very impactful, really, for me. But I have failed on certain occasions. So I'm trying not to communicate with clients at the weekend because I want to set clear distinctions, because in the past I have just reacted anytime anybody wants me, just reacted, and that's not helpful for our relationship. It's not helpful for long-term productivity. We can obviously react at the weekend if it's needed, if there's a campaign or an emergency, but it shouldn't be a standard, and that boundary needs to be set clearly. And I've slipped into that a little bit this week, and I know why. It's more of an emotional thing from my side when I'm feeling a bit nervous. It's always the feeling that I'm going to lose them or I'm not doing enough, and that taps into my own kind of insecurities, I think. But really, if I was just to communicate at that point, it's the weekend, I don't need to talk about this now, it would be absolutely fine. There have been a few slips, but mainly the big ones have been really, really brilliant and beneficial, and making me feel really strong and confident about work.
Oh, I'm so pleased to hear that. I'm so pleased to hear that despite that few slips, as you said, and few difficulties, you also had these positive outcomes and you feel much more confident. I think that's great. And another thing that you mentioned is that setting boundaries gave you that space to reflect. And this is exactly what Brené Brown says in her book called Braving the Wilderness. She describes the process of setting boundaries, giving ourselves the space to learn how to self-belong and really explore of who we are, what does it mean to us to be happy, what type of relationships we want in our life. I don't know whether you have any thoughts around this concept of self-belonging.
I mean, I just want to take a second to say praise be Brené Brown.
I know, she's such an inspiring speaker that, love it.
Her videos are amazing. I actually need to go back and watch a few of those again. So self-belonging. Now, the way I see that is there's this space that I've been able to create. By setting these boundaries, I've been able to get space. However that might sound to you, it feels like there's a little bubble around me where I'm now kind of like deciding what it is, what direction I want to go in. So perhaps that's how I'm experiencing the self-belonging, is working out the world that I want to live in and the world that I want to encompass just in this little bubble, in this little space that I'm making around me. And that's sort of how I see this self-belonging, because I've got my sights set on a goal and this is how I want to get there. And I want to provide a good service and I want to do a good job and build a great company. But these boundaries have provided me some headspace to really see clearly how I'm going to get there. So that's sort of how I'm interpreting self-belonging. But
I love your interpretation. I think you can also see that within that space, we have a time to pause and to really decide whether we want to be true to ourselves.
Yes, it's a pause again. Yeah, 100% it's a pause. Actually, there's an exact example where a pause and space, it really came into it. So this account that I've been leaving, we did an amazing event on Wednesday online, and they asked, would you stay with us to do another event? And I felt inside of me the, oh yeah, for sure, definitely, trying to creep up and out of my mouth to say yes to this piece of work that she's offering to me on a plate. But I just stayed quiet for what felt like an hour, but really it was 30 seconds. I just stayed quiet, and everybody just waited and went, okay, well, look, you think about it. So the weight of that decision has been shifted from the high pressure that I put on myself to say yes, to actually creating space for me to decide whether it is something that I want to do.
Fascinating. I love that example. How actually taking a pause, even if it feels forever, can help us to gain more time to make important decisions, and also for the people around us recognize that we may need a little bit more time before we commit to something. Love the example. Brené Brown, she also speaks in her book about belonging bubble. That's quite interesting concept because she stresses that belonging is not only a desire, but it's also our primary need. And if we don't find this feeling of belonging, it can be deeply painful. But in order to avoid that pain, we tend to belong and hang out with like-minded people and follow their trends and behaviors just for the sake of belonging, rather than because we truly want to or because they contribute to our happiness. And if that happens to us, if we are inside that belonging bubble, we may actually feel lonelier than ever. So this is where also setting boundaries give us space to assess whether we are in a belonging bubble. Have you ever experienced being in belonging bubble?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, WhatsApp groups sort of project to me a bit of a belonging bubble. Yeah, continuing a sort of narrative that doesn't necessarily suit anymore, just because of feeling like I'm part of the gang.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like I was looking at some of the WhatsApp groups and I was like, who added me? Why I'm even there? I'm not even interested in what those people saying. Who are these people? And suddenly I'm so definitely in a huge belonging bubble. I just need to get out the bubble. The bubble has to go. Well, it seems that within our there were lots of ups and downs around setting boundaries, but definitely I feel that setting boundaries help me to have more compassionate and meaningful relationships. I was able to invest more time into relationships that really matter to me, and compassionate because there was this open communication about why I'm setting certain boundaries. And definitely, I had more time and energy to invest in things that were important to me, and therefore boosted more happiness because I felt, yay, I actually achieved something great within something that was so important to me. Any other benefits or positive feelings that you experience as part of the setting boundaries?
Well, it gave me a lot of clarity, really. And I feel very confident. And also it made me realise that, well, actually, all of the times I've set boundaries, I haven't lost what I was scared of losing. So all related to work mainly. None of my clients have been annoyed, upset, or thought that I'm terrible by setting these boundaries. In fact, I think it's made a few of the relationships stronger. So it's all been very positive from my side.
Very positive, still quite difficult.
Oh, very difficult. That is worth saying. I haven't found it easy, and it's taken quite a lot of courage to do. And I've had to be quite clear-headed about what those boundaries are that I'm going to set. Like, I've been writing it down because I think it's again comes down back to communication of how to put it across and the reasons why, because it's important. So for me, that's what's made it possible, is working out how to communicate my boundaries, not just doing them, but it's the communication element that's made it possible rather than just terrifying.
Love it. Okay, just to summarize, we have a primary need to belong, and our social relationships are very important factor in boosting our happiness. However, we do need to belong smartly, and setting boundaries is a very useful tool that can protect us from conformity, from saying yes to things just because we want to belong. They protect us from being stuck in a belonging bubble and give us space to evaluate our relationships with others, but also our relationship with ourselves, so we can work on self-belonging. It's definitely easier to set boundaries if we know what makes us happy and why are we committed to other aspects of our life. It's definitely easier when we can give a reason to other people why we need to set certain boundaries and we engage in open communication. And it does help not to go hardcore, but rather be flexible and be fluid when setting our boundaries. So we don't have to be hardcore or radical.
Woohoo! I will see you next week at the 3rd episode of And Happiness, where we'll be discussing courage.
Cannot wait, cannot wait.
I think the dare this week should be to sum up all the courage in you to read somebody one of your creative writings.
Oh, you're killing me, Kitty.
I think you need to be courageous this week, Klaudia, and read somebody that's didn't even know you wrote poems. One of your poems.
All right. Oh, you're killing me. Okay, so you want me to share something very close to my heart that no one ever read or seen, and you just want me to share it?
Yes.
Like that.
I'd really be interested to know the process for you taking this thing that's so close to your heart, sharing it with somebody, and then I'm interested to know what happens for you from that.
Okay, Kitty, I will do it, but only if you do the same.
Damn it. Oh, God.
I know you've been writing some short poems as well and also some short stories, so I expect them to be dusted off and shared with other people.
Ooh, okay, all right. Challenge accepted.
Challenge accepted. I will see you at the next episode.
Amazing, Klaudia. Well, don't forget to like and subscribe and share with all your friends so that we can go up the rankings. It's very important.
Bye.
Bye.